Vancouver has an honorable history of creative attempts to fill gaps in the city's social support systems. The efforts have come from governments, community groups, universities, non-profit organizations, and in recent years, the business and investment community. Vancouver Mayor Gregor Robertson has a long-standing commitment to end street homelessness. Mayor Robertson states, "Let me repeat something I've said many times before. Ending homelessness isn't an aspiration or a rhetorical flourish. In a city as wealthy as Vancouver, it's a non-negotiable responsibility for every one of us." The City of Vancouver has outlined a housing strategy that includes an illustrated housing continuum proposing a tenant flow from shelters, SROs, and supportive housing to social housing, purpose-built rentals, and creative use of private housing. Oh, there seems to be a problem with this slide. There's an elephant in the room. It seems the elephant wants us to know that housing providers are fatigued. Housing demand keeps increasing, funds are limited, there are gaps in the housing continuum. Service providers are rewarded with unemployment if they get the problem fixed. Decades of work in the trenches entrenches attitudes and erodes agency partnerships. A growing question arises: how many years until I can retire? Let's be positive and mind the gaps in the housing continuum. One of the first gaps that can be filled involves post-shelter housing. A gap in post-shelter housing has been filled at 3475 East Hastings, a former 57-unit Ramada hotel purchased by the City of Vancouver, 1335 Howe Street, a former 156-unit Quality Inn purchased by Townline Developments and leased by the City of Vancouver, and the 100-unit former Bosman Hotel at 1060 Howe Street, leased by the Community Builders Group, now rebranded as the Metson, a Creole word reflecting the community learning process. Filling post-shelter housing gaps doesn't have to be expensive. Lean management and natural tenant-supported operations can be paid through tenant rents if public and private capital investments can provide a sustainable foundation for low-cost housing. The City of Vancouver has taken a bold step and facilitated a new form of lean and effective housing at the former Ramada, Quality Inn, and Bosman sites. At the Metson, a further step towards sustainability will be taken involving private contributions. All three housing centers are populated by people who are living on Vancouver's streets and in city shelters. Post-shelter housing can increase tenant flow rates and help the justice system, shelters, and hospitals to transition persons with acute housing needs right into supportive housing environments. Given the right conditions, 60% of tenants will flow out of post-shelter housing and into private housing, social housing, or even back to their home area in another town or city. A minority of the tenants will stay in post-shelter housing long-term. For other tenants in poor health, post-shelter housing may be their last home. Gap housing can be creative. Here's an idea offered by an innovative staffer at the City of Vancouver. This ship has 50 units and could house stable persons indefinitely after being purchased with private funds. Tenant rents could pay for a $500,000 purchase price mortgage, operating costs, and mortgage fees. On the downside, the project could give new meaning to the phrase, "man overboard." Minding the gap in SRO revitalization would prevent homelessness in Vancouver. There are still thousands of persons living in unsupported housing. Partnerships with private housing providers and the remaining private SRO owners is possible and doable. SRO revitalization has been a major focus of all levels of government. Private funding has also contributed to SRO upgrades. The 79-unit Jubilee Rooms on Main and the 71-unit Dodson Rooms on Hastings were purchased and renovated with investments from social entrepreneurs and sold to two nonprofits for 50% of fair market value. Now, the revolving benevolent investments are being used to launch other community investment projects. SRO revitalization doesn't have to be expensive. A strategic and private capital investment strategy enables tenants to pay for all operating expenses at the Jubilee and Dodson, including mortgage, insurance, and taxes. All remaining SROs in Vancouver can be revitalized. The process is underway right now at the Vogue, Regal, and West hotels. The work is risky and not for the faint of heart, but community rewards are awaiting the fulfillment of these efforts. Mind the gaps in purpose-built rental housing. Privately created low-cost rental housing is an option for long-term sustainable housing in Vancouver. The gaps in purpose-built rental housing can be filled when developers partner with non-profit housing providers. The concept is soon becoming a reality at 626 Alexander and 179 Main Street. No government funds are going into the development or operation of these two efforts. Filling purpose-built rental housing doesn't have to be expensive. If developers in any area of the city voluntarily adopt the 80-20 mixed-use housing formula, and the self-contained units are sold at cost and a lean operating model is employed, the units can be rented at shelter rates indefinitely. How can you take ownership of Mind the Gap and expand the concept with your own philosophy and branding? Learn and share through dialogue. Mix and match partnerships, governments, nonprofits, and business. Create and maintain an open source philosophy in your organization. Launch an anytime, anywhere blue sky thinking session. Visit Mind the Gap website.